Hey everybody, this is Perch. This mail says lack of cohesion at DC, and it reminds me that DC 2 years ago, or whatever, when they did the death metal, and they said we've got the omniverse now, and everything matters, and it was a concept that it felt like Scott Snyder was going to follow up on more, but didn't. He wound up kind of leaving the company after that point, and it felt like nobody really knew what to do with it. They had the linear verse and all these different elements that felt like they were just not well thought through. And here we are now with Dark Crisis, which is saying the Omniverse was a lie. I mean, I don't even know. Who knows? But I remember saying at the time that all this speaks to a lack of cohesion at DC, a lack of that all this stuff was just all over the place and it wasn't well orchestrated, and it sent a very confusing message to the readers of what counts, what doesn't count, and the answer DC was giving people was kind of like, whatever you want. I don't know. You decide. So this mail kind of addresses that. It says, howdy, Perch. I've been cautiously enjoying Zdarsky and Jimenez's run on Batman. He seems to respect and reference the lore and older classic stories, especially with the new issue 127. This email will contain spoilers for that issue due to the need of context. In Batman 127, Zdarsky piggybacks off of the Tower of Babel story from JLA, where he tells Supes that his contingency for himself going rogue is the League. Now, Batman lying and having multiple contingencies for everything isn't anything new or out of character. My problem is how the issue ends. Superman shows up to save his best friend, and my initial reaction should have been nice, but instead it was, but he's off-world. I think this is one of the biggest holes in DC. At the start of Rebirth, we did have that cohesion. The Song of the People, or whatever it was called, was mentioned in more than one book. There hasn't been a main Superman book since last year, so even the argument of, well, Action Comics isn't the main book and he's on Earth in the main one can't be used. So yeah, I'm with you, Perch. Oh, what's with me, Perch? Oh, this mail is about to take a turn. Fire everyone who's incompetent. You kind of lulled me into a sense of false security there, and then you went nuclear there. Anyway, drastically reduce the line to a manageable, sustainable, profitable number of books published. If DC has to stop putting books out pencils down, electric boogaloo style for a few months in order to sort things out, so be it. Or at least keep the books that actually sell in production, but not print them while everything is sorted out. Cheers. Okay, so now I'm curious, and people have to say in the comments, so how much does stuff like that bother you? Because that was my reaction, by the way, as well. So in the books, in Superman, he's been on this War World epic, and it has been an epic, and I think Phil Kennedy Johnson has done an absolutely kick-ass job in that title. It's good. It was new. It's a different version of Superman. He was doing Superman things in a different context, and I thought it was pretty awesome. So I like what he did, and I like he took a big gamble. He did something very different. And in fairness, spinning out a future state, this new DC, there are a handful of writers that got to do, very different things. I know several of you were not fans of Jeff Thorne's Green Lantern book. I was. I thought I liked the big swing of what he did with Jon Stewart. Whether you liked it or not, I hope at least that when we sit in a world where we're getting the 50th rendition of Captain America being sad about America, that you can at least say, hey, I didn't like, Kennedy Johnson's Superman epic, or I didn't like Jeff Thorne's Green Lantern epic, but I will at least say this. They gave us something new. They at least took a shot and didn't tell the same old story over and over and over again. And even if it wasn't for me, hell, it was not 30 pages of Jon Stewart eating. It was not, Superman questioning if he should stand up for the American dream while, wandering around the streets. I mean, it was at least something different. It new. I think that counts for a lot. Maybe not for you, but certainly for me. I think that attempt at sci-fi kind of big swing elements, that's really what I want to ask for in a comic. However, I think it seriously undermines those big swings when you get things like this, which is, Superman is off-world. He's in this epic. It's a huge status quo shift for Superman. And yet, over in Batman, he just flies in. And you're left wondering, and it's not a huge worry. I've mentioned this before, and people like to respond with Well, don't be a nerd. Like, why are you? This is only a nerdy thing people worry about. And you're right. So if I'm looking at the Batman book and I'm going, all right, so is this new failsafe story? Is it pre, War World Epic or am I seeing a future? Is this Clark in the future? Like, where does this all fit in? And this is not new to comics. Even in the 80s and the 90s and other eras, they absolutely did this kind of out of continuity. You'd have these moments where you're like, wait a minute, the character's here. How could the character be over there? I'm not sure. But it's happened more and more and more. And one thing that used to be more true is if the characters were truly involved in a character arc massive thing, like I would argue Warworld was. It's something DC promoted. It's something that was intended to be a big status quo change for the character. It was a big, big deal. They got John Kent to be a defender of Metropolis while Dad's away. Like, all these elements are intended to be, pretty major for the DC universe. The stakes are high. In the past, even though there were continuity errors, they rarely did things that were this blatant of, if they had a big thing to protect, they did tend to protect it. They didn't just randomly, decide, well, we'll just pretend this comic over here is in some, fuck it, I don't know. And I think that does erode the comics. Now, not terribly. I don't think DC is losing massive sales. I don't think there's a bunch of Batman readers who saw that, went, no, I don't know. I don't think that happened. I don't think that I don't think it actively loses sales. But what it does is present a perception that it doesn't really matter. And if the comic publisher is telling you it doesn't really matter, then I think you as the reader, you start to think it doesn't really matter. And the combo of the two adds up. I think you get to be, I think that it gets to be a problem. And this is I think where DC faces now is there. It doesn't actively push readers away, but it gives a continual feeling like we don't care about those details in our universe. Now, I think that matters when two things are happening. One, the price of your comics is high and you're printing a lot of them. In a world of a lot of $3.99, $4.99 comics, you kind of need to give the perception that you care. The other problem is whether you like it or not, and the publishers do not like it, their core audience are the faithful collectors, the lifers, the people who are the Wednesday warriors. That is the core of the people buying their books. And again, whether you like that or you don't like it, guess what that core Wednesday, comic buyer for many, many years audience likes? Continuity. Sucks, right? But they do. People who are all in on comics, people who are long-term collectors, tend to care a lot about continuity. More than the average comic reader, but that is where the bulk of their money is coming from. So if you send messages, and it's not, again, this one instance, not a big deal, but it happens a lot. And even trying to hand wave it away of saying everything matters and nothing matters, the omniverse. People don't buy that. They didn't buy it when they said it, and they're not buying it now. And all it really does is say, all right, which book do I pay attention to? Well, Batman is the most popular one. So therefore, Batman is the one that wins. So I guess Superman is here, which I guess the Philip Kennedy Johnson storyline is actually not that impactful. And I'm going to trust you less next time you say that there's a big status quo, the world will never be the same again incident, because the world is going to be the same. Sometimes even in the same month in a different comic. It's not going to matter. That's harmful. And that's something you want to avoid. So anyway, I like I said, lots of people will tell you, no, this is not a big deal. And as an individual case, you're probably right. It's not a big deal. But adding up over time, yeah, it adds up. It adds up and ultimately gets pretty negative. So, we're facing that. Anyway, there you have it. That's my take. Let me know your take. And again, it's easy to go, continuity, who cares? But it does. It matters. It matters in ways you don't think. It certainly doesn't matter in the sense of, is this going to create a nice little debate inside a comic shop of, when this issue took place, before or after, and all that kind of, sure, that could be fun. But over time, repeated, it just gives the impression that you don't care. Thanks for listening.